Hello folks, okay, in this video I'm going to be looking at Iowa and New Hampshire primaries in particular and looking at what the consequences are of these two states having a caucus and then a primary first and what impact that has on the race for the White House. So the first thing to have a look at is basically should these states really have it first? Many critics of Iowa and New Hampshire having their primaries first look at the overall demographics of these two states. I mean, Iowa is a rural state with very few people in the middle of the country. And if you have a look at this diagram here, you can see that overall the US population, you can see how many white people are and blacks and Hispanics and stuff. Well, Iowa and New Hampshire, as you can see, are overwhelmingly white, with very few ethnic minorities in those states. Whereas the Super Tuesday states, these of 2016, these figures, you can see how it actually was much more closely aligned to the national average. And so candidates, arguably, who appeal more to white voters, rural voters, because again, Iowa and New Hampshire are both very rural. Iowa, they grow lots and lots of corn and stuff. New Hampshire, again, it's a fairly rural kind of area. They're not really what's the word? They don't really fit into the demographics of the country. They're not kind of the norm. Some have said it'd be better to have a state like California being first, one where actual people live in, and there's lots of different people in that particular state. So in terms of demographics, there's a big problem with Iowa and New Hampshire being first. And then it leads to the second question is, what impact do they have on the race? Do they have a disproportionate impact on who wins or not? Now, this diagram kind of shows you who won Iowa and New Hampshire and whether or not that person became the nominee for their party. Never mind they actually won the election itself. Did they actually win the nomination for their party? And you can see it's a little bit hit and miss, although candidates who do well in New Hampshire and Iowa often do well in the primaries overall and very often do become the candidate. So usually the candidate is to win one or the other. So if we look here, for example, in 2008, now Obama unexpectedly won Iowa. Given, the colour of his skin and everything else, you wouldn't expect him to do well in Iowa. The original polls did not have him doing well either, but he managed to defeat Hillary Clinton in the 2008 Iowa caucus, much to the surprise of many political commentators. As a consequence, in New Hampshire primary, which was like a week later, although he didn't win it, he gained a lot of momentum from Iowa because all the news stories were then about how Hillary Clinton's lost it, her campaign's gone off the rails, Obama's wonderful, isn't he? He's done really well. Money kind of flowed into the Obama campaign. Questions were asked about the Clinton campaign, and Clinton did win New Hampshire, but with a far less overall margin of victory than what the polls suggested she was going to get before the Iowa caucus. And this is probably true of both Iowa and New Hampshire. They very often give the winning candidate or the candidate who does unexpectedly well a lot of momentum. And momentum is really important for primaries and caucuses because you want that momentum, people to think, oh yeah, this guy's going to win or whatever, in order for people to donate money to your campaign and people to then volunteer for your campaign. So the whole primary caucus system is largely built on momentum, and Iowa and New Hampshire give that early momentum. There have been a few candidates who've tried to ignore Iowa and New Hampshire and not bother campaigning at all. Mr. Bloomberg, in this latest set of primaries of 2020, did that. He didn't bother going to Iowa or New Hampshire. In fact, he only announced he was going to stand, a little way in with all his billions of dollars. He then tried to win the later states. He spent billions of dollars on Super Tuesday and got diddly squat. There's another candidate in I think it was 2012, Newt Gingrich. Was it Newt Gingrich or was it anyway, someone in a previous one, Rudy Giuliani, that was it, sorry. Rudy Giuliani in 2012 or 2016, I think it was 2012, he too ignored New Hampshire and Iowa for the Republicans, put all his efforts into some later states and got nowhere either. So winning these two states or doing unexpectedly well in these states can put rocket boosters behind your campaign, or the other way around if you don't. Donald Trump, for example, won in New Hampshire in 2016, and that then seems being like a credible candidate. So it's really important to do well in these two states. That said, it is noticeable, I think, that the Iowa caucus seems to increasingly favour candidates who are either a bit more left wing or a bit more right wing than the national population. Again, that's probably due to the caucus system itself. So Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee, you see here in 2008 and 2012, they were kind of very social conservatives, very much on the right of the Republican Party. Um, and then for the Democrats, they tend to choose more liberals as well in those particular states. New Hampshire, for example, really liked Bernie Sanders, and in 2020, they overwhelmingly supported Bernie Sanders. In 2020, Iowa supported Bernie Sanders, just won over over Pete Buttigieg. Okay, neither of these two people actually became the overall candidate. And interestingly, 2020 was interesting because Joe Biden did really badly in both Iowa and New Hampshire, yet, as we know, he did become the candidate. So the results from Iowa on the left, you can see Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders did really well. Joe Biden came fifth in Iowa. And on the right, you've got New Hampshire, where Bernie Sanders easily, came top in that state. And again, Joe Biden came nowhere. Joe Biden put all his efforts into South Carolina, which was like the fourth state to have a primary or caucus, mainly because of course the black voters there and working class voters, and he did really, really well in South Carolina. So he kind of bucks the trend a little bit, does Joe Biden in 2020. So it does seem that increasingly these two states are becoming less important in some ways in order to win if 2020 is anything to go by. But again, I think I still claim that it's important to do well in these two states in order to get the positive media coverage, the money to come in, etc., etc. Okay, I'm going to show you a short clip. This clip shows some of the activities just before the 2020 Iowa caucus. It shows some of the candidates, and of course, at the same time, you saw the impeachment trial taking place of Donald Trump. So it shows some of the backwards and forwards that was taking place.
That's 2 weeks away from the critical Iowa caucuses, the first votes in the country. Rachel Scott is on the ground in Des Moines, Iowa, with the state of the race. Good morning, Rachel.
Robin, good morning. We are in the final stretch, and this is traditionally the time when all of the candidates would be camped out in key early voting states. But that impeachment trial has scrambled the plans for the Democratic senators in this race, who will now be forced to split their time between Washington and the campaign trail. The Democratic senators running for president blitzing through key early voting states and making their final pitch before that impeachment trial begins.
It's mostly about getting out there at any moment you can. I don't need much sleep. I can get by with very little sleep.
The schedules for the four senators upended 2 weeks ahead of the Iowa caucuses.
We've had to, needless to say, jiggle our schedule very significantly because I'm going to be spending a whole lot of time in D.C.
Senator Bernie Sanders bracing for a busy Wednesday after the trial, traveling 1,700 miles to make a nighttime rally in Iowa, then straight back to D.C. While those senators are serving as jurors, their rivals will be making their case to voters. Mr. Vice President, how critical is a win in the first two contests for your campaign?
Oh, I think just doing well is critical.
In this critical stretch, the two leading progressives are still facing questions in the fallout of that post-debate confrontation.
I think you called me a liar on national TV. I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do it right now.
Do you think that gender is still an obstacle for female politicians?
Look, the answer is yes, but I think everybody has their own sets of problems. All right, I'm 78 years of age. That's a problem.
Senator Elizabeth Warren ready to put it all to rest.
I have no further comment on this. Being a woman, a problem. I have been friends with Bernie for a long time.
And a four-way race has emerged here in Iowa between the frontrunners, but not one single candidate has been able to consistently top the polls. At this point, Robin, it's still anyone's contest to win.
It certainly is. And this other headline I want to talk to you about, Rachel, the New York Times editorial board endorsing both Warren and Klobuchar.
That's right, Robin. The New York Times editorial board met with several candidates, but ended up backing the two female senators in this race.
Okay, and the second video I want to show you is what actually happened at the Iowa caucus, because there was basically a big cock-up that took place in the 2020 Iowa caucus. They had some app for telling the central Des Moines, which is the HQ, the main city in Iowa, what the results were, and basically this app failed, and so there were days and days without actually knowing who'd actually won the Iowa caucus, which again puts the whole caucus system in Iowa under even greater kind of scrutiny about, should this be changed for next year. So this little video, again, it's about 3 or 4 minutes long, just explains what happened in the Iowa caucus this particular year.
Party, 62% of precincts reporting from all 99 counties, and here they are. You can see that Pete Buttigieg is presently leading the state delegate count with 27%, Bernie Sanders with 25%, Elizabeth Warren in third at 18%, and Joe Biden presently trailing in fourth place. Tonight, Iowa indecision after nearly a day of chaos and confusion. Our first snapshot of the caucus results, but only part of them, showing strong support for Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders. Buttigieg speaking out late tonight.
And no matter what happens next, this much is undeniable. That fact represents an astonishing victory for this campaign.
The head of Iowa's Democratic Party tonight calling the system breakdown unacceptable.
As chair of the party, I apologize deeply for this.
The decision to put out incomplete numbers infuriating contenders like Elizabeth Warren.
I think they ought to get it together and release all of the data. That's what we need.
And Sanders, pressed by NBC News whether Democratic voters will lose confidence in the process.
This is not a good thing. Your question is a fair question. I think this is not a good night for democracy.
All of it coming after a caucus night that for Democrats produced anger and embarrassment.
I've never seen anything like it.
Neither have I. Caucus goers and candidates frustrated by the stunning failure to release the final results after problems with a new app precinct captains were supposed to use. Many trying to phone in their figures.
I couldn't get through. I tried a number of times.
We were on hold for about 30 minutes.
This is elevator music.
We have 1,600 caucus sites.
The state's Democratic Party first pointing to inconsistencies in the reported data, insisting this is not a hack or an intrusion. Then today blaming a coding issue with that app that was intended to speed up the reporting of results. Late last night, even with no numbers released, some 2020 contenders claiming victory before heading on to New Hampshire.
By the time it's all said and done, Iowa, you have shocked the nation.
Meanwhile, President Trump delighting in the Democrats' disarray, tweeting, "The Democrat caucus is an unmitigated disaster. Nothing works, just like they ran the country." And tonight, growing questions whether Iowa's status as host of the nation's first presidential contest will survive. What does this mean for the future of the Iowa caucuses?
Nothing good. The Iowa caucuses have to defend themselves every 4 years. And frankly, it's kind of difficult to defend even when things go well.
The delay here not just chaotic but consequential, robbing the winner of important momentum and allowing those who did poorly here to avoid negative headlines, raising the stakes for the New Hampshire primary, Lester, 1 week from today.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking.
So you can see from that video how Iowa and New Hampshire are always a little bit under scrutiny anyway about why their state should be first. Well, this particular year, there's a particular problem in Iowa, which again has really raised concerns about should these states be first, should there be a caucus first, etc., etc., etc. So how that just gives you a bit of an insight into some of the debates and issues that have been taking place around Iowa and New Hampshire being first.